I just saw the new decades later sequel Twisters last night, and I went to Regal Cinemas and I saw it in 4DX. The deal with Twisters, I saw Twister when it came out back in 1990, blah, 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 and I thought it was fun. It was good. I think I saw it a couple times in the theater. Never regarded it as some kind of gigantic classic. At the time, somebody said to me, they were talking about Twister and its popularity, and I'm like, it's not a movie, it's a ride. Because it was really this big effects heavy blockbuster Hollywood mainstream fluff film that was really about jumping from one giant special effects sequence of devastation to another. It's a descendant of the 70s disaster movie, really. So when I saw there was another one being made, I was like, oh, I see. There's another property that they think there's a little flower in that empty sack that they can shake a little bit more and get a little bit more out of. And the did not really appeal to me. A bunch of young, pretty people being young and sexy and running away from CGI wind and rain and twisters. And it just looked kind of big and kind of dumb. So what I said to myself and out loud to people around me was, I think if I'm going to see this, I'm going to see this in 4DX. Now, if you don't know what 4DX is, the their big city theaters, which I'm lucky to live near, have it in the, I think it's specific to Regal. It is this immersive screening experience. So you go in, you sit down, you have to climb up into a chair with footrests, and it feels a little bit like you're getting on a roller coaster, and in a way you kind of are. It shows the same movie everybody else sees, but it's enhanced with wind and rain and shaken seats that poke you in the back and poke you in the legs, and lightning in the theater. Not like bolts of lightning, but flashing lights and things like that. And it's designed to enhance the film experience, much like for audio, surround sound makes you feel like you're there a little bit more. This adds more to it. Now, this is going to be a review of 4DX as much as it is Twisters, by the way. I had gone to see Gremlins in 4DX several years ago, and it was amusing and interesting, but I thought it was super distracting because to me, I will talk about Twisters, by the way. The nature of the nature of narrative cinema is that you are an observer. You are outside the experience. Now, 3D was a way to sort of draw you in a little, but nothing is made for these formats. Now, I think the ideal version of 4DX, and 3D too, 3D has been just slapped onto movies after the fact for the last decade or so, and it does and it doesn't work, and it's really kind of a gimmick to just charge more for a ticket. To me, the best 3D would be a movie that is made with the idea that you're going to make a movie in 3D, and once in a while somebody does that, like Scorsese with Hugo, but it's really rare since the 50s, or since the 70s, let's say. Well, since the 80s. It's been very rare that anybody makes movies again. We're really going to work this 3D thing. 4DX is applying something to a movie that was never intended to be there. So as you're watching a movie, the camera is cutting from various perspectives, various angles, various distances, various locations. And for 4DX to replicate that, it's weird. So let's talk about Twisters. Twisters is a movie about young, sexy tornado chasers, various groups. We have our heroine, our lead is this young female who in college had gone out with a bunch of friends to do she has a way she thinks to tame a tornado or to kill a tornado with a certain process and a certain compound she's created. And her friends in college are out trying to make this happen, and something really, really bad happens, and she kind of says, okay, I'm done with doing this. Something pulls her back in, like Pacino in The Godfather 3. And she meets up with young, sexy guy who is sort of like the cowboy, down home. We don't need no fancy big city. Sometimes the old ways are better. We don't need no technology kind of storm chaser Yahoo. Has a team of people, ragtag group of people, has a t-shirt with his face on it. And they butt heads and there's a push and their pull. And eventually, they might just have to work together to figure something out. So that's the basic idea of there's really not much to Twisters. The characters are fine, but very, very slight. The non-Twister action there's not a lot to it. But again, this is a blockbuster action effects movie. It's nice when they put more than the bare bones into it, but I didn't feel like this movie really did put too much into it. It's like any disaster movie. You have to get to know the characters enough so that you care when they're in danger and you care if and when they kind of get sucked up into a sky vortex. So the effects are very good in this. Now, this is where I don't know how I'm judging this film accurately or fairly because I saw it in 4DX. My whole thing was the movie doesn't look good to me from the trailer. the extra stuff can only help. A lot of times I'll see something in IMAX or Dolby or 3D because I'm just like, this extra enhancement can only help a movie that I think might not be that great. So I went to see 4DX and I'm like, what is more made for 4DX where you can get wind and rain and shaken within an inch of your life in your theater seat than a movie that's about people having those things happen to them? And sure enough, it was a wild ride. It really did feel like the entire audience, which was a very sizable audience for a Monday night at 8 p.m., it felt like the entire audience was on a roller coaster. Like everybody had that excitement where you're sitting in your chairs before you start that climb. There was, tittering. And once that first opening scene hits where our female protagonist is in college and they meet a tornado, people were laughing and shrieking and screaming, and things are flying all over the place on screen, and you're getting shaken in your chair, and you're getting wind blown at you, and you're getting rained on. Not soaking rain. I kind of wish it was more intense to talk about the 4DX experience. I kind of wish the wind really was a lot stronger and the rain was heavier, but most people don't want to get, rained on and blown that hard by wind in the theater. So I think they tame it back a little bit, but the opening sequence is incredibly intense. I think, and no matter how you see the movie, you will feel that. There were people screaming when certain characters were in danger or certain things flew by. It was definitely enhanced by the fact that we were getting shaken like a paint can at Home Depot at some points, but it was a well done opening sequence. It's certainly, and it's what has become the template for a lot of movies where you put something really intense and strong up front, even if it's out of chronological sequence, so that you tell people, okay, folks, this is going to be really exciting. It might be a little slow for a while, but we gave you that stuff up front. It's going to come back again. It shows you structurally and mechanically what you're in for in the film. It doesn't make you wait. It really does give it to you almost out of the blue, and it's really effectively done. All of the storm sequences are very well done. Now, I have not watched the original Twister probably since I saw it in the theater when it came out, so I don't know. Had I watched it more recently, I might have been able to say, well, this character is just like this character, and this moment is just like that moment, and this is like this. I didn't. I went in relatively fresh. I'm going to say the majority of the audience that's going to see this are people who have a vague memory of Twister, or if they're younger, they've never heard of Twister, they've never seen it, this is new to them. I did enjoy the film. It's a fun ride. There's not a lot to it. When it's scary and intense, it's effectively scary and intense, even if your seat isn't shaking and you're not being rained on and you're not having air blown just past your ear. It's a fun movie. Is it a good movie? I don't know, but it's fun. And if I wasn't bored, again, I was being shaken and having wind and rain on me too much to be bored. And I do think I enjoyed the movie a lot more because of that experience, because during those sequences that were the storm sequences where you're getting the environmental effects, let's say, in 4DX, it was like legitimately, I don't want to say I was scared, but it was an intensity that I haven't felt in a movie for a long time, because usually you are separated that much from what's going on screen. Now, if it's a very well-made movie and there's good use of sound and photography, it can draw you in and make you forget you're watching a movie and make you feel like you're there. That's like the best suspense and action films can do that. Most don't these days. So the 4DX did help. I'm very curious as to what I would think if I ever do see this again, and I'm almost tempted to go see this again like in Dolby or something and see what it's like when I'm just literally sitting still watching the film. But I thought Twisters was fun. The cast is good, but they didn't draw me in as much as a Bill Paxton and a Helen Hunt did in the original, because when that movie came out, they were both known quantities. People knew who Helen Hunt was. It was 2 stars in that movie. Maybe not A-list stars. It's one of those things where a lot of times a production can save money. They can put all the money that they save on casting A-list actors into the production and make those special effects that much better and come in on their budget better without having, George Clooney and whoever, and Julia Roberts in this film. Not that they would at this point. So anyway, I think this movie's doing incredibly well, which makes me happy because theaters need the business. I want to keep being able to go to the movies in theaters. I want to be able to keep going to drive-ins, and I'm seeing all these things online where drive-ins are selling out left and right, having to turn people away for this movie. So good. Anything being a success makes me happy. Good for the filmmaker. I'm blanking on his name, and I deeply apologize. It's the filmmaker who made a film called Minari, which was a great movie and way different from what this is. It's always interesting to me when you have somebody who makes a very thoughtful art house movie and they're like, here's the keys to the next Fast and the Furious. It's just like, Well, that's interesting. So anyway, in theaters now. See it in four. If you see this in 4DX, let me know what you think. It's a really interesting thing because I don't know if I can separate my experience of, again, being shaken, spritzed upon, and having wind all over me from what the experience of the movie was. But honestly, the movie kind of felt like a TV movie sequel. It kind of felt like a made-for-video sequel, not in its production quality, but in the fact that the cast did seem a little bit lower tier. But it's entertaining. People had a great time. People applauded in our theater at the end of the last tornado sequence for the heroes that had saved the day or survived. And that's entertainment, folks. So in theaters now from Universal and Warner Brothers, Twisters. And I hope they make more of these just so the next one can be TWIST 3RS. And then the one after that can be TWIST 4RS, which doesn't really work, but they do it anyway. And then so that they can get to the fifth one, so it can be TWISTER 5. That's what I'm looking for, Hollywood.